Everything is changing so fast, but now with Xfinity, you can power a house full of devices at once with ultra-low lag. Do more of what you love with Xfinity. Restrictions apply. Actual speeds vary and not guaranteed.
Say goodbye to your credit card rewards. Greedy corporate mega stores, led by Walmart and Target, are pushing for a law in Congress to take away your hard-earned cash back and travel points to line their pockets. The Durbin-Marshall credit card bill would enact harmful credit card routing mandates that would end credit card rewards as we know it. If you love your credit card rewards, tell your lawmakers, hands off my rewards. Tell them to oppose the Durbin-Marshall credit card bill.
Welcome to Education in Focus. I'm your host, Eliana Kernodle. At its Galaxy Summit 2024, Chicago Public Schools offered presentations and workshops for students to, quote, learn about and celebrate the galaxies of gender, sexuality, and love, end quote. The summit was funded largely with a federal grant, but also received a significant contribution from an HIV pharmaceutical company. Joining me to dig into this is Chalkboard News editor Brendan Clary. Brendan, can you start us off by telling us about the summit? What kinds of presentations and workshops did they have?
Yes, yeah. So it's called the as you said, the Galaxy Summit, and it's basically like a wide-ranging sort of LGBTQ plus focused space, I guess you could call it, that was kind of on those kinds of issues for students and staff. Essentially, as the district put it, to try to help them support those students, LGBTQ plus students, and it focused on a number of different things. So one of those was like the importance of activism and mental health coping skills, and then also like sort of things that you might expect to find at like a school event, like crafts, so like origami and little paper bag puppets and that kind of thing. So it sort of ran the gamut of different topics through the course of the day, and as I understand it, it was I think from 9 to 4 p.m. on a Saturday earlier this year. So this was in March. So it really did kind of range, but I think so there were different kind of topics throughout the day. Just kind of depending on the time of day. And I think maybe you could even choose a track or something like that. So in a nutshell, there was kind of like these wide-ranging topics. And
they advocated for some pretty controversial positions in some of these presentations. What were some of those?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of those was the rights of students at Chicago Public Schools. So it basically told students that they do not need parental consent for them to access the bathrooms or sports that they want to be in, and that they don't have to be forced to use a single cell restroom. So essentially, and this is a quote from the slide that students were shown, is that students shall have access to restrooms, locker rooms, sports, overnight trip room assignments, and other gendered spaces in line with their gender identity and or based on their comfort, the presentation said. This is in line with the Chicago Public Schools policy on like parental notification. So that's been a big issue in recent years. Some school districts have had policies saying, if a student changes their gender identity or asks for some of these accommodations, then we have to tell parents. And other school districts like Chicago Public Schools have said, no, we're going to side with students, and we do not have to tell parents if they're going to have a gender transition at school. And so the presentation went over that, basically of instructing students that informing students that they can instruct staff to change their name in the official record keeping system called Aspen. And so for official reporting purposes, they still have their legal name, but you're allowed to use your affirmed name and pronouns in class without parent permission. So that's, one of those. Another one was what activism looks like within CPS for students. And that sought to instruct students on the basics of activism. Like, why do we need to advocate in the LGBTQ plus community? And, who are some famous activists in the community? And they basically were told, you can march, you can write, you can do some community organizing, digital activism, fundraising, strikes, protests, peaceful protests, which makes you kind of wonder what protests were, if they have to have peaceful protests after that. I'm not sure. And then walkouts. And at the end of the slide, students were asked if they had advocated or if they were planning on participating in activism. So, it's kind of a wide range of things there. And then, mental health was talking about essentially coping skills. So based on these different kinds of like dialectical behavior therapy and cognitive behavior therapy. And I don't think that those are, really controversial in their face, like helping students kind of navigate some of the challenges there. But I do think that there is maybe some pushback. Some have, sort of criticized schools for trying to become, de facto therapists kind of unofficially, right? And say like, have counselors kind of standing in or teachers kind of standing in and sort of playing the role of a mental health professional. And so, I think that you could say, hey, maybe that's not the role of a school. I think you can also say, well, if they're not getting it at home or if they don't have access to mental health professionals, then this is the place to get it. So that's kind of the range of some of these topics that were discussed.
And you requested more information from Chicago Public Schools. What response did you get from your FOIA request?
Yeah, so the slides that I got from the Galaxy Summit, so I got a couple of I got the activism slide and the students' rights slide, but I did get some slides that were not really part of it. So they gave me like 2023's, like a presentation from 2023. Didn't really make much sense. And it's pretty clear from social media posts from a group that was behind that it was from the previous year. So some of the stuff didn't really make a lot of sense, but they did also. So that's what I got. I also got a budget breakdown.
Can you get into that? How was it funded?
So a lot of the money came from a CDC grant. $47,383 apparently came from the CDC, according to a budget breakdown from Chicago Public Schools. And in previous years, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, CDC, they've offered millions of dollars up to schools to start gay-straight alliances to support LGBTQ plus youth. And so that, it might be related to that. I wasn't clear from them what the scholarship was or what that grant was. Usually you can trace the funding based on that. And I did do some digging into that. And it does seem like it maybe was a related grant, but some of the numbers were a little bit off. It starts getting really into the specifics there. But essentially, they said that almost the majority of that money came from the CDC, the feds. And then about $6,000 came from the Chicago Public Schools board, funds from the board. And then about $9,000, according to the budget breakdown, said it was from a Viv Healthcare, which is a specialty pharmaceutical manufacturer that creates HIV treatments. So they have 17 different HIV treatments, and it's headquartered in England, but it's like nationwide. And it's actually a partnership between GSK and Pfizer and Shionogi, from what I could tell. So these are pharmaceutical companies that have banded together to be focused on HIV. And that's the human immunodeficiency virus, and that can cause AIDS. And so the district said that that Viv Healthcare paid for lunch and that it was $9,000 for a catered lunch. But a spokesperson from Viv Healthcare told me that it was more than lunch, and they actually were a paid sponsor of the entire Galaxy Summit, which meant that it could have its name out there and its logo, and it also had opportunities to share resources with students and staff. So essentially, it's just kind of, I think it's a little bit, it was surprising to see, an HIV pharmaceutical company at a school event for 10 to 18-year-olds. So it's just kind of it was an interesting turn that I didn't expect when I started writing this piece.
Did they specify what sorts of resources they were sharing with students? Or is that not information you have?
Yeah, that wasn't included in their statement. And I think that you can kind of imagine if it's like collateral, like here's some swag that has something. And essentially, from what I've seen, they want to partner with these communities to end the HIV epidemic. So they say, we're here until HIV is completely done, and we're going to try to come up with a cure. And it's focused on finding new innovative ways to help improve the lives of people living with HIV. But yeah, was not very clear about, what they were offering to students. I mean, you have to imagine that it's some kind of, promotional material of like, hey, this can maybe maybe help. But again, not very clear. Because I think that, the way that it was kind of framed is, they paid to have their logo up. They paid to have an opportunity to interface with attendees, which in this case would be students and staff. But, it paid for this to have opportunities to be able to do that.
Well, Brendan, thank you for your insights on this story. Listeners can keep up with this story and more at chalkboardnews.com.
Say goodbye to your credit card rewards. Greedy corporate mega stores, led by Walmart and Target, are pushing for a law in Congress to take away your hard-earned cash back and travel points to line their pockets. The Durbin-Marshall credit card bill would enact harmful credit card routing mandates that would end credit card rewards as we know it. If you love your credit card rewards, tell your lawmakers, hands off my rewards. Tell them to oppose the Durbin-Marshall credit card bill.